Welcome back to Strategic Leadership in the AI Era. I'm your host, and this is episode 21, The Geopolitics of AI, How Nations Are Competing for Technological Supremacy. I want to open with two numbers that, taken together, break almost every assumption people carry into this subject. Here's the first. According to Stanford's Institute for Human-Centered AI, the 9th edition of its annual AI Index, private artificial intelligence investment in the United States reached $285.9 billion in 2025. In China, over the same period, private AI investment was $12.4 billion. $12.4 billion against $286 billion. The United States outspent China by more than 23-1. Now the second number. As of March 2026, the same AI index measured the performance gap between the best American model and the best Chinese model at 2.7%. 2.7. In May of 2023, that gap ranged from roughly 17.5 to 32 percentage points, depending on the benchmark. And since early 2025, American and Chinese models have traded the lead more than once. So, 23 times the private capital, buying a lead of under 3% on a scoreboard that keeps changing hands. I want you to hold on to that because it dismantles the mental model most executives are still using. The AI race is not a rocket launch where whoever spends the most gets there first and everyone else watches. It is much closer to a race where the frontier keeps getting cheaper to reach, where capital buys speed, but not exclusivity, and where the durable advantages turn out to be in places most strategy decks never mention. Silicon, electricity, standards bodies, and law. Today, we zoom out from the boardroom to the map. And I promise you, this is not an abstract exercise. By the end of this episode, you'll see exactly how a licensing decision in Washington, a materials announcement in Beijing, and a vote in Brussels land directly in your supply chain, your compliance budget, and your roadmap. Let's get into it. Let's establish where things actually stand using the best single dataset available. On model production, the AI Index counted 50 notable AI models from the United States in 2025, against 30 from China. And China's count had roughly doubled from 15 the year before. Over 90% of notable frontier models came from industry, not academia or government, which is worth pausing on. The frontier of a technology that every government now calls strategic is being advanced almost entirely by private companies. On research output, the picture inverts. Chinese institutions accounted for roughly 23% of global AI publications and about 21% of citations. On patents, the AI Index puts Chinese filings at nearly 70% of the worldwide total. That is not a country catching up. That is a country that has been running a different strategy, breadth and diffusion, while the United States ran depth and frontier capability. On physical infrastructure, the American advantage is stark. The United States hosts 5,427 data centers, more than 10 times any other country. And on industrial deployment, China installed roughly 295,000 industrial robots in the most recent year measured, against about 34,000 in the United States, nearly 9 times the rate. Read those together and you get the real shape of it. The United States leads in frontier capability and compute infrastructure. China leads in diffusion, publications, patents, and putting machines into factories. Those are two different theories of how technology creates national power, and both of them are working. Two more figures for context. Generative AI reached roughly 53% population adoption within 3 years, faster than the personal computer, faster than the internet. And documented AI incidents rose to 362, up from 233 the year prior. Adoption and harm are scaling together, which is precisely why governments stopped treating this as an industry story. Now to the most consequential instrument in this entire competition: export controls on advanced semiconductors. And here we have unusually good data, because the effects showed up in a public company's financial statements. On April 9th, 2025, the United States government informed NVIDIA that a license would be required to export its H20 chip to China. The H20 was itself a compliance product, a deliberately reduced processor designed to fit inside the previous restrictions. The financial consequences were immediate and disclosed. NVIDIA recorded a $4.5 billion charge in the first quarter of its fiscal 2026, tied to excess H20 inventory and purchase obligations. It reported $4.6 billion of H20 sales before the licensing requirement took effect, and said it was unable to ship an additional $2.5 billion in that quarter. Absent the controls, the company indicated orders would have totaled roughly $8 billion. And in its own filings, NVIDIA characterized the China AI accelerator market as one it believed could grow toward $50 billion, a company estimate, but a telling one. Then the policy reversed. On December 8th, 2025, the president announced that NVIDIA could sell its H200 chip to approved customers in China. And on January 13th, 2026, the Bureau of Industry and Security formally revised its license review policy for semiconductors exported to China, moving to case-by-case review for the H200, AMD's MI325X, and similar chips, subject to 3 conditions: that exports not reduce global semiconductor capacity available to American customers, that Chinese purchasers maintain export compliance and customer screening procedures, and that products undergo independent third-party testing in the United States to verify performance and security. Press reports have also described revenue sharing arrangements attached to these approvals. I'd treat the specific percentages as reported rather than confirmed. So what did the controls actually accomplish? Two honest answers, and they point in opposite directions. First, they cost the restricted companies real money and real market position. NVIDIA's chief executive has stated publicly that the company's share of China's AI chip market fell from around 95% to effectively zero. That is his characterization, and it is a striking one from the person with the most to lose by saying it. Second, they did not stop Chinese model performance. Remember the opening number, 2.7%. The controls constrained hardware access without constraining capability convergence, which tells you something important about where the binding constraint on AI progress actually sits. And the counter move mattered too. On October 9th, 2025, China issued 6 directives tightening export licensing on rare earths, magnet materials, lithium battery precursors, and super hard industrial materials. One of which introduced an extraterritorial licensing obligation on foreign-made products containing Chinese rare earth inputs. Then, in the weeks after a leaders' meeting at the end of October, Beijing suspended them. Announcement 70 on November 7th suspended all 6 directives. And Announcement 72 on November 9th paused the United States-specific licensing requirements on gallium, germanium, antimony, graphite, and super hard materials, with that suspension running to late November 2026. Note the structure of that. Not a repeal, a pause with an expiry date. That is leverage being held in reserve, and it is scheduled. For any leader with a physical supply chain, that is the single most important sentence in this episode. Your input costs and availability are now downstream of a diplomatic calendar. If control over AI chips is the new strategic choke point, it's worth being precise about where the choke point physically is. According to TrendForce, the top 10 foundries posted record combined revenue of roughly $48 billion in the first quarter of 2026. And TSMC's share of that foundry market reached 72.3%, up from 70.4% the previous quarter. Samsung, in second place, held about 6.5%. SMIC about 5%. 72% for one company. And Stanford's AI index states the position plainly. Nearly all leading AI chips come from TSMC in Taiwan. That is the most concentrated dependency in the modern economy, and it sits in one of its most contested geographies. Every AI strategy in every company on Earth rests at some remove on a small number of fabrication facilities on a single island. Now, the second physical constraint, which is rising faster and gets discussed less, electricity. The International Energy Agency's Energy and AI analysis puts global data center electricity consumption at around 415 terawatt hours in 2024, roughly 1.5% of global electricity, having grown about 12% a year over the preceding 5 years. By 2030, The IEA's base case has that reaching about 945 terawatt hours, just under 3% of global electricity. That's roughly 15% annual growth, more than 4 times faster than electricity demand growth from all other sectors combined. Within that, the AI-specific component is what's moving. Electricity use by accelerated servers, the ones running AI workloads, is growing around 30% a year, against 9% for conventional servers. And the geography of that growth is itself geopolitical. Between 2024 and 2030, the IEA projects the United States adding about 240 terawatt hours of data center demand, a 130% increase. China adding about 175 terawatt hours, a 170% increase. Europe adding about 45 terawatt hours, 70%. Together, the United States and China account for nearly 80% of global growth. Here's the figure that captures the divide most sharply. In 2024, American data center electricity consumption ran about 540 kilowatt hours per person, projected to exceed 1,200 by 2030. Across Africa, it was under 1 kilowatt hour per person, and projected to reach roughly 2 by the end of the decade. 540 against 1. That is not a technology gap. That is an infrastructure gap that will take a generation and enormous capital to close. And it explains why sovereign AI became the phrase of the decade for every country not on the winning side of it. Which brings us to the strategies. 3 major powers, 3 genuinely different theories of victory. Start with the United States. On July 23, 2025, the White House released Winning the Race, America's AI Action Plan, setting out roughly 90 near-term federal policy actions across 3 pillars: innovation, infrastructure, and international diplomacy and security. Alongside it came executive orders, including one promoting the export of the American AI technology stack and establishing an American AI exports program. The strategy is explicit. Export the full stack: hardware, models, software, applications, and standards to allies and partners, while tightening controls toward adversaries. The plan also directs effort at countering Chinese influence in international standards and AI governance frameworks. The December 2025 National Security Strategy carried the same theme, stating an aim to ensure American technology and American standards in AI, biotech, and quantum drive the world forward. That is not primarily a research strategy. It's a distribution strategy. Win by becoming the default infrastructure everyone else builds on. Now China. In August 2025, the State Council issued its guideline on deepening implementation of the Artificial Intelligence Plus initiative. The targets are specific and public. By 2027, the penetration rate of new generation intelligent terminals and AI agents is to surpass 70%. By 2030, above 90%. By 2035, China is to have entered a new stage of intelligent economy and intelligent society. Notice what is being measured there, not model benchmarks. penetration, diffusion into 6 key sectors: science and technology, industry, consumption, public well-being, governance, and international cooperation. China's stated theory of victory is not to build the single best model. It is to embed adequate AI into everything faster than anyone else. And when you set that alongside the robot installation numbers and the patent share, it stops looking like rhetoric and starts looking like a plan being executed. Then Europe. In February 2025, at the Paris AI Summit, the European Commission launched Invest AI, an initiative to mobilize 200 billion euros for AI investment, including a new European fund of 20 billion euros for AI gigafactories. These are defined as facilities capable of handling the full life cycle of very large AI models, with compute at the scale of 100,000 or more advanced accelerator chips each, plus the storage, networking, power, and cooling to match. The Commission has described it as the largest public-private partnership in the world for trustworthy AI development. Europe's theory of victory is different again. Build enough sovereign capacity to have a seat at the table, and set the rules everyone has to follow to sell into a market of 450 million people. And beyond the big three, capital is moving at extraordinary scale. Gulf states building multi-gigawatt compute campuses with American partners. India announcing a sovereign large language model. I treat the headline totals as announced intentions rather than deployed capital. The pattern, though, is unmistakable. Compute has become something countries build for the same reasons they once built ports. Now the dimension that business leaders systematically underrate: regulation as a competitive instrument. The European Union's AI Act entered into force on August 1st, 2024. Prohibitions on unacceptable risk systems and AI literacy obligations began applying on February 2nd, 2025. General purpose AI model obligations began on August 2nd, 2025. And the big one, the requirements on high-risk systems, was scheduled for August 2nd, 2026, which is right about now. Except it isn't. And this is a live example of standard setting colliding with reality. In November 2025, the European Commission proposed deferring parts of the high-risk regime through what became known as the Digital Omnibus, citing the late arrival of harmonized technical standards. The Council and Parliament reached provisional agreement on May 7, 2026. Parliament formally endorsed it on June 16th. The Council gave final green light on June 29th. Under the agreed timeline, obligations for standalone, high-risk AI systems now apply from December 2nd, 2027, and for high-risk AI embedded in regulated products from August 2nd, 2028. The package also introduced new prohibitions and strengthened the AI Office's governance powers. There are two lessons in that sequence, and they matter more than the dates. The first, even the most determined regulator in the world discovered it could not enforce rules before the technical standards existed to comply with them. Ambition ran ahead of machinery. The second, and the strategically important one, if you are a multinational, the compliance clock just moved. And it moved after many organizations had already budgeted, staffed, and sequenced against the original date. That is not a reprieve. That is volatility in your planning assumptions. And the correct response is not to slow down. It's to recognize that the direction of travel never changed, only the deadline. Meanwhile, the three regulatory philosophies keep diverging. Europe pursues a rights-based, risk-tiered legal regime. The United States favors voluntary standards to preserve innovation and security flexibility. China promotes international cooperation while maintaining state control over data and deployment. Three approaches, three sets of obligations, one global product. And underneath the politics, the quiet institutional work continues. The International Standards Body, ISO, and IEC's Joint Committee on AI, established in 2018, has grown to a catalog of over 35 published standards, anchored by ISO/IEC 42001, the first certifiable AI management systems standard. On the multilateral side, a United Nations-backed global dialogue on AI governance and an independent international scientific panel on AI now give nearly every state a forum to argue about norms. This is where power gets exercised without anyone noticing. Whoever writes the conformity assessment procedure decides whose products clear customs. Standards are trade policy wearing a lab coat. Let me bring all of this down to ground level because none of it is theoretical for anyone running a business. First, supply chain. If your product depends on advanced compute directly or through a cloud provider, which is nearly everyone, you have concentration exposure to a single foundry holding roughly 72% of the market, located in the contested strait, plus materials exposure to export controls that have been suspended with an explicit expiry date rather than repealed. You do not need a geopolitical forecast to act on that. You need to know which of your suppliers can name their own upstream dependencies and which cannot. Second, compliance surface. You are no longer subject to one AI regime. You are subject to as many as you have markets. The European high-risk timeline moved by more than a year. It could move again. What does not move is the underlying obligation to know which of your AI systems would be classified as high risk and to be able to document how they work. Build the inventory now. The deadline is the variable. The inventory is the constant. Third, energy and siting. Data center demand is on track to grow about 15% annually to 2030, 4 times faster than everything else on the grid. If your growth plan assumes compute is a commodity you can buy at a stable price on demand, stress test that assumption. Power availability is becoming a constraint on AI capacity long before chips are. Fourth, talent. The AI Index reports a steep decline in the net inflow of AI scholars into the United States since 2017, with much of that decline concentrated very recently. Talent has always followed opportunity, but it now also follows visa policy, research funding, and national strategy. If your hiring plan assumes one country's labor market, it is exposed to another country's politics. Fifth, and this is the strategic reframe I'd most like you to take away. Stop thinking about this as a two-country race with a winner. 23-1 in capital, buying under 3 percentage points of advantage on a leaderboard that keeps changing hands is not the signature of a race anyone wins. It's the signature of a technology that diffuses faster than it concentrates. The companies that do well in that world are not the ones that bet correctly on which nation prevails. They are the ones built to operate under multiple regimes at once, with a supply chain that has alternatives, a compliance function that speaks 3 regulatory languages, and a compute strategy that isn't hostage to a single geography. Optionality is the strategy. Prediction is not. Let's make this actionable. Number 1, map your AI supply chain to its physical origin, not your vendor, your vendor's dependency. Which chips, which foundry, which country, which materials. Most organizations cannot answer this today, and it takes a few weeks of real work to be able to. Number 2, build a high-risk AI inventory now, regardless of the deadline. Under the revised European timeline, standalone high-risk obligations apply from December 2nd, 2027, and embedded ones from August 2nd, 2028. Classify your systems and document them on the original schedule anyway. You will need the inventory for procurement, insurance, and customers long before a regulator asks. Number 3, put compute and power into your scenario planning as first-class variables. Model what a 20% rise in inference cost or a 2-year delay in data center power availability in your region does to your roadmap. The IEA's growth curves make both plausible. Number 4, watch the calendar, not just the headlines. The suspension of China's materials controls runs to late November 2026. Export licensing policy in the United States shifted twice in 12 months. Put the known decision points on an actual risk calendar and assign an owner. Number 5, diversify your regulatory posture deliberately. Decide whether you will build one product to the strictest applicable standard or maintain regional variance. And decide it consciously, because most companies drift into the expensive answer by accident. Number 6, engage with standards. Don't just comply with them. The certifiable management system standards and conformity procedures being written now will define market access for the next decade. Participation is cheaper than adaptation. Number 7, hire and locate for optionality. If a single visa regime, a single grid, or a single strait can stop your AI roadmap, that is not a geopolitical risk. That is a design flaw you can fix. That's our look at the geopolitics of artificial intelligence, the competition that will shape the conditions every business operates under for the rest of this decade. Let's recap the numbers that matter. $286 billion of American private AI investment against $12.4 billion in China, a 23-1 gap that has bought a lead of 2.7%. 72% of the foundry market in one company on one island. Data center electricity heading from around 415 terawatt hours to roughly 945 by 2030, with the United States and China accounting for nearly 80% of that growth. 20 billion euros committed to European gigafactories. Chinese targets of 70% AI penetration by 2027 and 90% by 2030, and a European high-risk compliance deadline that moved from August 2026 to December 2027, while companies were already building toward it. None of those numbers tell you who wins. All of them tell you what you have to be able to survive. Here's your challenge for this week. Take one page. Down the left, list your 3 most critical AI dependencies: the model, the compute, and the data. Across the top, write 3 columns: where it physically lives, which government could restrict it, and what your alternative is. Most leaders find the 3rd column is empty. Filling in even one of those boxes is more valuable than any forecast about which country prevails. And this brings our recent run of episodes to a close. We started this stretch at the negotiating table, moved through supply chains, customer trust, the finance function, and autonomous systems. And we end here, on the map. If there's a thread running through all of it, it's this: the leaders who do well in the AI era are not the ones who guessed the technology correctly. They're the ones who stayed close to the evidence, insisted on measurable outcomes, and built organizations that could absorb being wrong about the details without being wrong about the direction. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with the strategists, policy professionals, and global business leaders in your network who need to understand where AI and geopolitics intersect. Subscribe to Strategic Leadership in the AI Era wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review. It helps more leaders find these conversations. Until next time, keep leading strategically, keep building for optionality rather than prediction, and keep your eyes on the map as well as the model. This has been Strategic Leadership in the AI Era. See you in the next episode.